Hey guys, it's Stu. Just thought I'd do a second update on the my entry into the 75th anniversary Tiger One group build, which is hosted by Adam Mann and Evan McCallum, or as we all know him, Panzermeister 36. And this entry is going to be my entry, which is the initial Leningrad Tiger, the 502nd Battalion, based around the Leningrad region, 1942-43, and it's Dragon's 3-in-1 kit as well. The actual one, as I'd indicated on my last update, is going to be this one, Tiger 3. From the 502nd, which is an initial, which I think was the very first action that the Tiger One was used in. I may be wrong, but I'm likely right. I don't know. The kit itself has been an absolute dream to build. In fact, it's the quickest I've ever built a Dragon Tiger in the space of virtually 2 weeks. It fits like a glove. There are no issues at all. I didn't come across any. And the detail on it is just absolutely exquisite. It is a limited run now. I think this kit, which is 6600, is hard to get. It's getting harder to get hold of now. But I would heartily recommend it if you want to get hold of one, and the only sort of place you're going to source it, I would suggest, is eBay, which is where I snapped this one up. I think I got this one for about 35 quid or 35 pounds, and I'm glad I did, to be honest with you, because I did have this in my stash when I first built up my Tiger stash, but then I had to sell it on. But I managed to snap another one up, and was waiting for the appropriate time to build it, and this was the group build that I thought I would enter it into. I've had to make 1 or 2 modifications on it, because when I was studying the actual subject and doing research on it, I found that, as I'd indicated on my previous video, they didn't actually have any spare tracks on the front of the glacis, or the frontal armour. It was totally bare, and I've actually got some photographs from a book, which is Tigers in Action, showing you that they also had these side bolts on the side of the, at the side armour, whereas on the kit it's indicated it's completely flush and plain, which was absolutely incorrect. And I know that for a fact because Dave Bryden, who's the actual one of the researchers for Dragon, didn't actually work on this kit when they were going to release it, and he pointed out to me that they did actually have the bolts on the side plates ready for the what do you call them? My brain's gone into a brain fart. What was I going to say? Side skirts, that's it, the side skirts. I had to think about that for a minute. To be honest, guys, this is my 7th attempt on getting this video done. Reason being, I shall tell you in a moment, once I've actually run through the build on this. Yeah, it's a beautiful kit. I'm pleased I got into it. I mean, my mojo on this build has been going 110%. I've never been fired up by a Dragon kit as much as I have with this one. There's a few things I've picked up on YouTube as well as regards doing battle damage, which my good modelling buddy Mike Cohen actually did a video on recently. I think it was last week, and I got inspired to do that, which I did with a little mini drill that I've got. So I managed to add some, actually if I get a pointer, such as a cocktail stick, if you notice on the front here I've got little marks where the shells have actually rebounded off the armour. Also on the side plates as well, I've gone over that on the side plates, on the turret itself, on the turret bin, because they were always getting a hit with shells and dinks and dented and God knows what. and drilled them out with a little pin vise. Also made some marks on this side plate armour here, and down the glacis, which you see here as well. I've got some shell hits there. I mean, these things would have had everything thrown at them in the course of a battle, as it were. Also, I added some exhaust shrouds because, as you know, I actually did some research on some of the photos of the 502nd, and indeed, these actually got on the back of some of the vehicles exhaust shrouds. So I depicted it. This was during the latter stages of the Leningrad campaign. So this is weird. This is the period I'm sort of depicting for this particular one, this particular tiger. Now, for the eagle-eyed amongst you, I know one or two of my friends, in fact Mike noticed it as well last night, it is a little bit wider on the sides of the hull. The reason being is because when I actually originally put this kit together with the side plates on it, it was completely bare, as I said previously. And then David pointed out to me that no, there were bolts on the side. I actually had these as spares in some of my Tiger Stash spares. So I dug them out, put them on the side. There was a little gap, so I filled that up with some little mech pack sprue and some spare plastic card at the ends here. Put them on for the gaps there and just filled it in with a little plastic putty. So that worked, was magic trick. So if it looks a little bit wider, that's why, because I'm just trying to make it a little bit more historically accurate, as it were, you know. And for my own pleasure, really, more than anything else, not for the rivet counters. So, you know, that's why I did what I did, really, just to give it that little bit of authenticity. And I'm very happy with the results that have come out. Now, the wheels I haven't actually got glued on, they're just dry fitted at the moment, along with the DS tracks, which I have to say the detail on those is absolutely beautiful. And the magic thing is with this, on the rear idler wheel, when you actually fit that, you can actually use it to clip in, as it were. So when you get the tracks in, you can clip it on to tighten the tracks up, and then obviously you enhance the natural sag of the tracks when you get to the end of this stage of the build. And there is a technique behind that as well, which I think the late great Shepherd Payne actually sort of guided in one of his books, as to how to reproduce sag on German armour, as it were, or any sort of armour, as it were. So I'll be using that technique, and I know Mike's actually done a video on that as well, I think about a year or so ago. So there you go. I mean, I've just roughly fitted it out to see what the final kit looks like once it's actually fully assembled. Now with the radio aerial, again, I've just used some spare sprue on that from my dad's old stock. Just popped it down with a little bit of super glue. And as you see on the back here, I've dented up the rear turret bin, and unlike the turret bin that you know on the early version, this was completely different, and I must admit that was a devil to put on. Beautiful to assemble, no fit issues on that, but when you had to try and line it up onto the back of the turret itself, because you've got some little markers on there, one side kept falling out, so I've used copious amounts of glue, and because that ended up melting the plastic. But the one thing I will warn you is, if you want to put any battle damage on that, be extremely careful, because when I was actually putting the dents through on the mini drill, it came off again. So I had to re-glue it again, let it set for about an hour and a half, and then today I basically went round with a pin vise where the battle damage is. In fact, I'm just waiting for it to come round so I can show you, and then just put a hole, shell hole in here amongst the dent, one in here, and I think 1, 2, 3 on the back, and then obviously I've got a couple, one here at the side and one at the top here. Again, I was very, very delicate when I actually drilled that in, because I didn't want to snap it off, so it is a little bit delicate if you want to do that sort of thing with this kit. The only thing I've got to sort of finish off really is there is a spare couple of helmets. Unfortunately, I tried to sound one out and destroyed that, so I'm just going to have one on there. I think it's going to be on this side, nearer the commander side, because you've got little sort of etched brass strap for it to hang from the grab handle at the end here, so I'll probably put that in as a finishing touch. And obviously I've got the wheel hubs to go on the front wheel here. On some of the Tigers, they used to remove the wheels. Now the reason being because sometimes all the mud and muck would get into the tracks, and then it would actually end up getting bogged down. So in that instance, they used to take some of the wheels off, just to give it the ease of access through the terrain, as it were, you know. So I've depicted it as is on the kit here on Tiger 3. Although in the illustration in Tiger 1, which is a sister craft, they've actually taken the middle wheel out. So it used to vary from vehicle to vehicle during the course of the field of action, as it were, you know. And the thing you'll notice with this compared to the early version is that you haven't got a little toolbox at the top there, the wooden one, and at the back there are no FIFO filters, although on the Tunisian initial Tigers they did have FIFO filters, mainly because of all the dust and sand. They didn't want it to get into the engine and cog it up, as it were, you know. The other thing that I found quite challenging, and it was my first attempt, was actually setting down the track cables either side, because they've actually got genuine steel cable on there. So that was quite a challenge to shape that and get that down, but I thoroughly enjoyed it, and I was very successful. It did take quite some time, I would say about half an hour either side. First one did, but the second one I did that in about 5 to 10 minutes, so that wasn't a problem really. And I did manage to find another grab handle out of my spare stash, because I've got a couple of cartons here for me spare parts, because obviously with Dragon kit you get loads and loads of spare parts, and to be honest with you, in that respect a lot of people curse Dragon for doing that, but I don't. I think it's a bonus, because if you lose any parts, you ding them off or lose them into the carpet monster, it does come in handy, and it's been a bit of a godsend really. So Dragon, thank you, carry it on. Never mind the rivet cutters, rivet counters, carry on guys, because that is a bit of a bonus. And you can also add them to any sort of Tamiya kit or anything else if you want to enhance the detail, so you know, it's an added bonus on that respect. So basically that covers that build, and then obviously the figures I've got here, the loader, I actually manipulated his arm just to give it a little bit more flexibility, because obviously in the scene that I'll show you for the vignette shortly, that's the reason I moved his arm. I was initially going to have the two arms actually on the top of the hatch lid here for the loader's hatch, but decided against it. And also with the commander's figure, I did a little bit of scratch building on that as well, in regards to where his headphone set is. If I wait for it to just come round, bear with me a minute guys. If you notice, I mean you won't see it here, in fact I'll get him out, I'll show you. What I did, and I probably pointed this out in the previous video, I used some fuse wire here to enhance the cable running from his headphones into his communications module, or mic as it were, when he was communicating to the crew. So yeah, that's basically what I did with that really, just to give it a little bit more added detail, which will add to the scene. So basically that's the build in a nutshell guys really, and as I say, I would heartily recommend you go out and get this kit if you can get hold of one. It's a beautiful little kit, and I know a few other builders have built one or two of these, and they say they love it as well, so there you go. Now I will say that I want to take this opportunity also to thank everyone who's basically left me well wishes, because unfortunately I've been off with my bad back from work for the best part of nearly a fortnight now. I was hoping to get back to work tomorrow, which is Friday, in about half an hour's time, because it's now 11:30 at night on Thursday night. But I took a turn for the worse on Tuesday. Woke up in severe pain, absolute severe pain. Was as white as a sheet, felt very shivery. and even my housemate Toby basically said, dude, you need to get down and see the doctor. So I thought, right, okay. So I had to phone work, let them know. They were very understanding, I have to say, so thank you guys for all your support at work. I'm sorry I've not been there, but I'll be back. Don't worry, I'll be back. And I want to assure you that I'm not overdoing it. I'm not hunching over the bench. So basically what I'm doing, I've got a cushion at the back of my back here in my seat, which I'm using to support me back. So I'm not hunching over the desk, as it were. I'm just bringing the kit to me and working on it. And I'm like that. I just cannot be sitting around feeling sorry for myself, and to be honest, this is taking my mind off it, so it's helping him really. So in a way, it's all my sort of constructive therapy really, and I just love being creative and doing things with my hands, as it were, you know. So there you go. And to assure you of this, I will prove a point. I'm just going to move the camera. There we go. To prove a point, I've actually got my cushion there on my chair, so you know I'm not overdoing it, and I'm pacing myself in my build, so I'm just doing 40 or 30 minutes at a time, just to keep myself occupied, and then having a rest, and then coming back to it, having a rest, and then coming back to it, you know. So there you go. Okay, so I'm not straining my back. I just can't be sitting around doing nothing all day. So, you know, that's why I'm doing what I'm doing. And as I said, this is taking my mind off it. Anyway, I'll show you what I've got proposed for the vignette that I'm going to do. It's particularly around this sort of region where you've got snowy fields and it's around forest. So here we go. Okay. Right, I'll just move the tiger aside a minute. In fact, I'll put it in its position where it's going to be, which is, I'd say about here. So there we go. That's where it's going to be positioned. Actually, I'll move it over a little bit more. There we go. Right, let's move the turntable out of the way. Here we go, guys. Now, basically, the scene is depicting a patrol going through the Russian forest outside the outskirts of Leningrad. The trees that I'm actually using are a set I bought over a year ago, which is made by Woodland Scenics, which is this set here, so I'm going to be using them. Because I thought to myself, well, I can't just have the column of soldiers and the tiger on its own. It just needs something to sort of enhance the scene, as it were. So I'm going to be using these Woodland Scenics trees, which you can see here, because they've actually got the flock in them as well, leaves. It is very dark, which would indicate a Russian forest because it's quite all dark with the foliage, etc. And obviously I'll be putting snow on them, and you know, nodules of snow on them because it's in the dead of winter, obviously, you know, around about January 1943. And obviously you've seen that I've got the cold wind set of infantry by the side of the tiger, which you can see here. To your left, I think it's your left, or is it right? No, it's your left, which is Master Box's cold wind set, which you see here. So I've basically got them in the same sort of stance, as it were, and I have to say these figures are beautiful. You can't beat Master Box for figures, I have to be honest with you. I mean, mini art are fairly good, but Master Box, wow. That I would put them in the same league as some of the dragon figures, to be honest with you. I just love the way they've got the tunics flowing in the wind, and it's depicting a scene in the dead of winter around about January 1943, obviously when they're trying to advance into Leningrad, which was one of the first actions that the tiger was involved in. Although it was around about 1942, technically speaking, but I'm doing the latter period of the Leningrad campaign, really. with a column of soldiers making their way through, which is the backup infantry for the Tiger Regiment that's going through for the 502nd, and they're on their way into Leningrad, coming out of the Russian forest in the dead of winter. Because obviously what I'm going to use is some filler, a polyfiller over it. I was going to think of doing celluloid clay, but I'm just a bit worried with it shrinking, it might ruin the frame, so you know, that's why I'm going to go with some polyfiller. As I saw a similar modeler using the same technique for a A-wing crash set. I think that's is it Models for You? Yeah, I think it's marked from Models for You. So I thought I would use the same technique. Obviously I should be digging these trees into it and then painting them up and weathering them and putting the foliage on, etc. And I'm not necessarily going to do a muddy road terrain. I'm going to do it as though it's initially coming through on the road of the snow, and it's digging up the snow at the back here. I'm churning up the mud, etc. You know, and they're just trouncing through the thick snow, as it were. So basically that's my idea behind the story. In fact, you can probably get a better look here, and I think with the foliage either side it's really going to enhance the scene really, which is going to look fantastic. It's just an idea that popped into my head because I did do one update with just the figures and the tank, and I thought, yeah, something missing. This will enhance the scene. It will just add interest to the scene, I think. So there you go. That is basically what I'm laying this out. This is what it's going to depict, really. I mean, I might cut back on the trees. I don't know. It depends on how much the foliage takes up, you know. And it's a fairly new sort of laden forest, as it were, you know. So there you go. So basically, guys, that's my idea behind the vignette for this group build. And as I say, if you want to get hold of one of these kits, I'd heartily recommend it. I really would. And in fact, I've been going on for about just the best part of nearly 22 minutes now, so I'm not going to waffle on anymore. And I have to say, I've watched all the other progress on all the other builds and some of the completed builds on the Tiger Group build, and I have to say I'm mightily impressed and inspired by them. In fact, this is what's inspired me to do this scene here, really, you know. So we shall see how it turns out, you know. So there you go. Anyway, that's it for now, guys. So leave your comments in the comments column, and if you would like to subscribe, by all means do so. Thank you very much, and I would thank everybody who's subscribed to my channel so far. Really appreciate your support, and to all the guys out there who have given me much valued advice and inspiration with their builds. So until the next time, get kit crazy, happy modelling, and I'll speak to you soon.